Hey guys, welcome back. This is the final video in the bicycle frame build series. I tricked you guys. Actually, it wasn't a trick. Some of you guys thought the last video was short, and I agree. So in this video, I'm going to cover facing and reaming the head tube and bottom bracket, and then finally going into some detail on how I made the PB badge. First, facing and reaming the head tube. This being my first time, I wasn't sure how much tension to put on the spring, and I ended up putting a bit too much. I found that just a bit of tension does the job. Of course, it depends on the spring you're using, but for my spring, several turns was pretty good. Then, once the facer touched down on the head tube, I just kind of kept an eye on it and stopped when I could see the tool cutting the full top surface of the head tube. I then proceeded to pull the tool out of the head tube in probably the worst way possible. I was so excited to finally be finishing the frame that I wasn't really thinking, and I just kind of like yanked it out of there and I turned it the wrong way. I realized my error pretty quickly, and for the bottom side, I did things properly. When removing the tool, I held the cone on the opposite side into the tube while I turned the tool in the direction of the cut and gently gave it a pull as I was doing that, and that worked out really well. Next up is bottom bracket threading and facing, or maybe I just call this chasing and facing, because the bottom bracket is already threaded, so I'm not actually threading it. You can see that I threaded the cutters in by hand first. I turned them in there, and I was a bit surprised that they threaded in so easily. I think that if this was the only bike I was ever going to build, I would have been able to maybe skip the whole threading and facing, that whole process, and just go ahead and install the spindle without having to buy like expensive tools and all that. Or you could drop by your local bike shop, I guess, and have them do it for you if you're just doing one bike. Okay, so this is pretty straightforward and doesn't need an explanation. The only thing to note is the use of cutting fluid for all the reaming and threading and facing. Park Tool sells fluid specifically for this, so I got that stuff. Alright, now we'll do the badge. I used a printout to trace myself an outline of the PB logo. When I cut the top tube to length, I had 2 end piece cutoffs left over, so I used one of those for the badge. I centered the drill by eye to make the inner circle cuts. And then I went around and made a bunch of entry point cuts for where I would insert the end mill to make the cut of the outline. Here's the tiny little 1/16 inch end mill. Right away you can see the little chips sticking to the surface and making it really difficult for me to see the outline I drew. So I had to use the air hose to keep blowing the chips away. That got cumbersome really fast. I ended up securing the air hose with the magnetic indicator holder to the head of the mill, and I used some zip ties to hold the hose in place. And then I was moving that tiny little tool too fast, and I broke it. So I had to order another one. I actually ordered 2 just in case it broke again, but it didn't this time. I was moving it slowly. If I were to do this again, I would make a special collet to hold the 1/16 inch end mill. And that collet would go inside the standard collet. The reason for this is, as you can see, the spindle is so low that it makes visibility really difficult. It was really hard for me to see where the tool needed to go in order to follow that line. Okay, so I left some of the straight cuts uncut and used a jeweler's saw to detach the badge from the tube. If you follow me on Instagram or Snapchat, you would have seen a post with this little widget that I made, and that is to hold the badge against the surface of the tube. I'm using silicone bronze and filling the holes I drilled. This is called TIG Brazing. I'm heating up the tubing just before melting point and then filling the hole with silicone bronze filler. Silicone bronze has a slightly lower melting point than 4130. I watched 2 videos on how to do this. The first video was one by Jared Morris. In that video, he uses silicone bronze to TIG braze some bottle bosses. And the second video is one by Jody of Welding Tips and Tricks. I'll have links to their videos in the video description of this video, so do check that out. So because I needed silicone bronze filler wire quickly, I had to order from Amazon, and the only size they sell, or that I could find, was 1/16 inch, which was too thick. I didn't think it would be, but once I saw it in my hand, it was too big. I ended up using my grinding wheel to shave them down to a smaller diameter. I had done a bunch of practice fills on some test tubing and found that the diameter of the filler was super important because the drilled hole I was trying to fill was so small. The thick wire was blobbing in there instead of flowing in. The trick is to be patient and heat up the steel enough to form a puddle, and then back off on the amperage until the puddle starts to disappear. That's the moment when you start dabbing the silicone bronze wire in there. Once I dabbed the silicone bronze in there, I then finished it off with a burst of amperage to make it flow and fill the hole. While I'm finishing up the badge, I want to thank you guys for all the comments and congrats on the build. It was a truly heartwarming experience, and the build was like, it was really great to finish up the build, but to read all your guys' comments was just like a great feeling, just a really wonderful feeling. Thanks, guys. A bunch of you guys wanted to see a test ride video, so I'm in the process of figuring that out. Hopefully that will be the next video. My son might help me out with some camera work, so that should be pretty fun. Another question I got is, what will the next project be? I need to make my son a bike. I'm planning a long-tail bike made from a frame I have lying around. I've never recycled a frame before, so that should be fun. Okay, that's all I got. Have a great rest of your weekend, and I'll see you guys next week.